Hi, this is Nicole from Custom, and in today's video I'm going to show you some more results and some updates about the Project X more powerful Dynamo. If you have just come here, I have a more detailed video what Project X is. I'm going to give you some brief overview, but for more details please follow the links either a card or in the description. Most importantly, I tested it currently the best in the Dynamo world, the newest SON29, and what happened when I did that, so stick around for the results. And as usual, a bit of a disclaimer, and I'm probably getting a bit ahead of myself, but I'm in no way putting down 3-watt dynamos or your regular dynamo that is out there. This is my experience with the project and the results I got with it, and you'll see my reasoning why I started this project and everything behind. But again, a disclaimer, I'm not putting down and calling 3-watt dynamos crap. A bit of a very brief introduction if you just went into this video. I have a lot more detailed video cut over there, I think, on all of this, but basically why do we need more powerful dynamos and why are dynamos so limited as they are. And as you can see, this one, this is on Ladelux. It says 6 volts, 3 watts. And like I said in my video, and I'm just going to explain to you here briefly, this is incorrect. Well, not really incorrect, but it's only true in a certain condition. And this is when you have a 28-inch wheel and you're powering one of these. Right there, incandescent bulbs or halogen bulbs, which, you know, I'm not that old and I have barely used this, and I don't think you can even get this anymore. This is a 100-year-old technology, and for more than decades, if not half a century, pretty much electronics do not act like any of this, and the dynamos are tested. The regulation, the 6 volts 3 watts, is basically designed to power one of these bulbs, and it's better represented. Actually, the bulb is very well represented by this little guy here, which is a 12 ohm resistor. So basically, the dynamos give you this only at 15 kilometers an hour in a 28-inch wheels. And like I mentioned, nothing out there, no electronics that we have today, no LEDs, no nothing out like any like this. But the dynamos are still based on a regulation that is century old, and the whole dynamo regulation and the halogen bulbs and the 12 ohm resistor has not changed for decades. So we've been trying to use dynamos for what they're not really designed. And basically, when you use a power supply, like this is a power supply, it's a generator. When you use a power supply in a way that it's not designed, obviously it's not gonna act like designed. And this is the problem, because when you work in power electronics, you usually design the power supply first, while in this case we've gone backwards when it comes to dynamos. We have an ancient power supply, even though this is made, I don't know, this is quite new, even 2000, if you got a dynamo 2025, like made like yesterday, it's still gonna be basically the same thing if it was like made 100 years ago. So in a true way, when you work with power electronics, I started with the power supply, and this is how Project X Dynamo was born. And there's some efforts to show how this can be slightly improved. There's some tricks, but again, you're tuning a small engine, and even with modern ones, which kind of go a bit on the side of regulations, like I'm going to show you now, is you're still tuning a very small engine. It's still a 3-watt dynamo, so it's not a nuclear power plant, and it's not going to give you anything extraordinary. So here we are, the SON28 versus the SON29 and project test, or in short, why does the 3-watt dynamo need a makeover? So as you know or you don't know, I visited SON in Tübingen. This is actually where they will be moving, but this was their prototype facility. I visited everything. And one of the main reasons why I visited them is to see how they actually dynamos are made, so I can understand what can be customized in a new dynamo, and how much it would cost and why would it cost so much. And actually one of the things that I got out of my visit there is I bought one of the newest dynamos, SON29S. Obviously I bought it afterwards, but as we were doing there, I talked with Nasri, who was very nice to show me. He's the Dynamo development engineer. And one of the things they said was, I'm quoting, kind of, I'm paraphrasing here, is, well, we have this new Dynamo, which is actually quite much more powerful than what we already have. You can also tune it up higher, so it is above, regulation. What is this? I'm gonna get into a bit if this is a bit foreign to you. So this we already know how to make. We don't need to make any special tooling, because actually this is what's gonna be the more expensive part, the development and the tooling for making a completely new dynamo. So I bought one, and a bit of a background what it is. So it's the SON29S is the model, and this is the latest in dynamo technology. It is 3 watts with 29-inch wheels. And why does that matter? I'm gonna get into a little bit. And that's why the name, in a very German creative way, it is called SON29. So basically, dynamos are supposed to give 3 watts when laced into a 28-inch wheel, going about 15 kilometers an hour when loaded into a 12 ohm resistance, like this one here, or like I told you, the halogen bulb, again, ancient regulation. And so SON tested this one, well, certified it with a 29-inch wheel, and basically 29-inch wheel. I don't think they can get very big with these very massive tires. So basically they are big, and when you lace the sand dynamo into a smaller wheel at the same speed to spin faster. I mean, this is not new. People have done this. Basically, lace a SON28 in a 20-inch wheel to get more power. You don't really get more power. You just shift the curve and all that, and I'm going to show you what I mean. So basically, when this dynamo, the SON29, kind of like skirts around the regulation, and that's why it is more powerful than the SON28. And SON28 is called 28 because it's built around 28-inch wheels. Again, very German, very logical. And it is advertised, the SON29 is made for charging. And it is, since it's already something they made, and as I was there, and even in the video, like link in the description, I can show they're already manufacturing some fixtures, how to make and streamline the production of the SON29, and it is currently available. So it is certainly more accessible and cheaper alternative for Project X. So basically, if they tune this within the limits of what can be tuned, new magnets, coils, etc., would it actually be better than Project X? And the initial results are in a different video. I'm gonna post some of them here, but we'll see. And before we get into this, so that's my test setup. So I tested 3 dynamos, and they are a bit newer than what I tested initially because actually a lot of tests are done on the SON28 Classic. So I tested the SON2812, new dynamo there in the middle and dirty, SON29S that I just got from Schmidt, and the Project X. And here a bit of a side that a lot of people, they're similar. Obviously, when you make prototyping, you have to use what is available. So they look similar, and a lot of people think, oh, I just basically took this 29 and called it a different, which is not the case. So I know there have been quite some comments that, I kind of copied the latest SON model and instead I made it. So this is it, SON 29. 6 bolt, actually it's center lock, but it's the same as Project S. So there you go, you can see Project X there. Well, let me zoom out. As you can see, they are not the same. And right here you have your garden variety SON28, and back here you have your SON Classic, which looks completely different. So there you go. They look different, and they don't just look different, they act very differently as well. One is much more powerful. This one. So these are the 3 dynamos tested and my electronics test conditions. So again, most my electronics, as they have a buffer recharge, they have a buffer battery because you need that, because dynamos, even Project X, it's low speed, they don't produce smooth power, so you need kind of buffer. So there's a buffer recharge only. Then you add a 2.5 watt load on the USB-C port, because a lot of people use the dynamos for charging. And then you add a much heavier load, which is like a big phone. 2.5 is more like a GPS, like a Garmin. Although more GPSs and more charging around 5 watts nowadays. So you add 5.5 watt on the USB port and see what happens. But before that, and I'm sorry if you have seen this before, but if you have just gotten into this video, it needs a bit of an overview about the Stalker, which is my device, and we need to talk about regulated power supplies. So very briefly, what is a regulated power supply? It gives you what you need, and the most common example that you're very familiar with is a phone charger. This is my phone charger here. So it's regulated 5 volts and 2 amperes. Basically, you plug into the wall 220 watts here in France, in Europe, and then you get 5 volts, 2 amperes. So it gives you what you need. This is the first part. And the not so obvious part, it gives you control. And a very practical example is LED dimming. Basically, you regulate the current, and that's how it works. It is still a regulated power supply. And in red here, which is the very important point, and which is kind of like what leads into everything that I'm going to show now, dynamos are not regulated. They're not 6 volts and they're not 3 watts. Again, I have a video why this is it in much more details. But dynamos vary by speed and load. Speed, as you can imagine, the faster you go, the slower you go, the power changes. And the power that is really confusing to a lot of people and seems to be misunderstood by quite some people, even those who design electronics for dynamos, is load. And just a simple example, basically, if you run your LEDs at full power, dynamos act in one way. And if you run them at half, so you dim them at half power, then they act completely differently. And this is a source of many, many headaches and lots of burnt components for somebody who develops things for dynamos like me. And still on the Stalker, so very short history. Obviously, I showed version 1 in Eurobike 2024. It is based on a companion. It's a light like this one, and I'm going to post another picture. It's the world's first dimmable dynamo headlight, and it has a buffer battery, and you can charge devices. And it's still based around this and called it the Stalker. But actually, at Eurobike, I met Schmidt. It's not the first time I met them. I've met them before. I met them at Paris Brest 2023, the concluded machine. But I've been talking with them at various expos, and here we actually really got sat down and talking. So basically, if you're not limited by the 3-watt regulation ecosystem, what would you make? So we discussed that a more powerful Dynamo is possible. So with that in mind, I completely redesigned the Stalker into version 2. It has a new power flow control, and it can take more power if it is available. And I'm very emphasizing here more power if it is available. So what I mean by this, so the Stalker has this power flow control, which I call Shadow Soul, very creatively represented by this purple box. So it is limited to about 8 watts. You have to limit things because otherwise, you know, the Dynamo becomes a regenerative egg because they do have some resistance. So the electronics are limited about 8 watts on the input, and how a 3-watt Dynamo can do that. Again, watch my video. I explain it all there, but they can do that. So they go into this box which takes care of the power distribution, and it decides. It always gives priority to the USB-C port and the lights. And if there's extra power available, it recharges the buffer battery. And the new part here, which is so far nothing in the bike industry does that, it can combine both, and the output can reach up to 12 watts. So this is all done by this part, by Shadow Soul. And as you can imagine, if you have a less powerful Dynamo, it's going to be taking more from the battery. And if you have more powerful, it's going to be taking less and even might be charging it. So this is why the system works with either 3-watt dynamos or more powerful dynamos like Project X. The regulated power supplies come here is the internal buffer is regulated to 3 watts recharge, so that's why it works perfectly fine with the 3-watt dynamos. USB recharge is limited to 7.5 watts, again depends what you connect to it, and then it's about 4 watts at full power, again the dimmable. And output can reach 12 watts Dynamo and battery. And before we to get into the results, we need to talk about Dynamo efficiency because they don't do this out of thin air. And in the colors there you see your typical dynamos. So the one I tested, the SON28 new is SON2812 is the orange one, and there's pretty much dynamos you see there, and you will see that Project X is significantly more efficient. Besides that it's more powerful, it is also more efficient, and by seeing how it's made, I actually understand why now. But basically dynamos don't make it out of thin air. And just to throw a number out there that is easy to calculate, if you are getting 10 watts electrical out of the Dynamo and a 50% efficiency, it is actually storing around 20 watts mechanical. So something that's more efficient is going to slow you down less. So devices tested in test conditions. I tested my Stalker version 2, so it's a bit different if you have seen my previous results in the video. It has a firmware and a bit of a hardware tweak. So the electronics are limited to 7.5 watts or 8 as I showed you, and buffer charge at 3 watts, and then I'm going to start, I added the 2.5 watt load in the USB port and 5.5. Same has been done to all of them. I have a Project Q1, which is basically another device. Electronics also and 7.5 watt limited, and the buffer recharge at 4.5, so charges the buffer a bit faster. Project L1, same thing, but it's limited to a higher input at almost 9 watts. Buffer recharge is 4.5. And Project Q2, which is basically Project Q1 adjusted lower, so electronics are limited at 6 watts before it starts using the battery. Buffer recharge is at 5 watts, so it basically charges the battery the fastest of all 3. Before we get into all this, we need to talk about the elephant. Not the elephant, but the 12 ohm resistor in the room. The dynamos, like I mentioned, are 3 watts to a 12 ohm resistor because this represents best halogen bulbs, which is a 100-year-old technology. I'm not old enough to have used them significantly or even have seen them. So, and they do this at 15 kilometers an hour. So as you see in blue is the SON28, which is the one that meets the regulation, like I said. And as you can see, it does the 3 watts right here. And SON29S is more powerful than the SON28 already. Like I told you, why? Obviously, it has a bit different construction and magnetics and all that inside. And it is actually not by a small margin by SON28, but I mean, then you have Project X Dynamo on top, which puts them all basically in its small pocket and puts them to shape. Again, this means nothing because in it, and I always keep repeating this, electronics like LED drivers, chargers do not like anything like a 12 ohm resistor. But this is just to show you how the 3 watt figure is actually obtained, and that yes, indeed, SON are not lying, that the SON29 is more powerful, but even so, Project X, even at 5 kilometers an hour, kind of beats them all. But this is not so important. This is just to set up the stage. So you have my Stalker in version 2, and this is how the power flow works. Basically, you have nothing on, it's just recharging the battery. And well, I'm actually missing some data, but I've tested Stalker version 1 before, and as you can see even here, Project X is more efficient than the other two because, like I mentioned, 3 watts is regulated. So basically, once you reach 3 watts nominal, it should be a straight line. As you can see, both the SON28 and SON29 actually consume, well, provide more power, while the electronics are regulated and it's not. And there's some data missing. This is because of my test setup, because basically I take a video, I have my setup there, and basically, I take a video and then I take, like you see, I write it here, and then I sit down and plot everything out of the video. Basically, I don't care what is going on, so I'm kind of unbiased, and it takes a bit of time to do the setup. When I saw that it's missing, I didn't want to put the setup back in. So these are the initial results. As you can see, Project X works exactly like a regulated power supply, and the SON28 is a bit less efficient, which is kind of like it is here. So again, I didn't want to redo the test, and you see why. But right now we're still on the Stalker, so basically you start to add something on the USB port, like a 2.5 watt load, like a GPS. And as you can see, both SON28 and SON29 at higher speeds, they cannot keep up with the power demand, while Project S is happily there. Again, overall, when the going gets tough, they neither can keep up. And if you actually add 5.5 watt load, so 5.5 plus the 3 watts here, you're definitely over the input limit of the electronics, which is about 7.5 watts. And as you can see, as the going gets hard and you increase speed, both the SON28 and the SON29 simply cannot keep up, and the Project X in gray keeps up nicely. Again, I'm missing a data point here for the SON29 because the GoPro chewed it up. Basically, this is more or less in line with what I have tested with my previous video, and you have seen this before. So I tested a new project, which I called Q1, where the buffer recharge is a bit higher. Again, this is how the power flow goes. And again, this is why I didn't retest the Stalker with the buffer recharge. As you can see in gray, Project X is more efficient than the other two dynamos, meaning they produce more power into the absolutely same electronics, which are regulated. So this I still don't understand why it does it, but it is a nice feature. Obviously, if it was the reverse, I would have been more concerned. Basically, if this was higher than the other two, I would have been more concerned, but Project X is more efficient than both SON28 and SON29. Again, you have a 2.5 watt load, and you can see that actually the SON29 has tough time keeping up here in orange. Project X basically keeps its own, while both SON28 and SON29 at higher speeds cannot provide the enough power. The power output decreases with speed. And this is the same when you put even a heavier load on top. So again, you reach the electronics limit, and you'll be probably pulling some from the battery and all that. But as you can see, actually SON28 can kind of keep up with with the Project X, but SON29, even though it's more powerful, it doesn't. Although it can produce more power at a lower speed. And this is another project. Again, I'm not going to bore you too much with data, so I'm just going to go quickly over it. But Project L1, again, buffer recharge at 4 and something watts. The same thing repeats. Basically, Project X is more efficient because, again, electronics don't change. So the battery charges at the same rate because it's regulated. So Project X charges, basically, once it reaches the nominal value, it stays there. While actually here, SON29 is a bit more efficient. And again, when you add a 2.5 watt load, all the other two dynamos, the 3 watt dynamos 28, 29, cannot keep up, while Project X is what you would expect. And with this project, with this version of my electronics, actually I found something very weird here. Basically, you can get ridiculous amounts of power from the dynamo, and I don't know exactly how it works. I mean, this is a new project for me. I don't think I'll be pursuing it for other reasons. As you can see, when you load it up really, really hard, you can get ridiculous amounts of power, and still Project X keeps up, while the other ones kind of reach a 5 watt limit. And this seems to be the pattern. They basically at around 5 watts, they both kind of reach a ceiling. And Project Q2, which is basically Project Q1, just a bit tweaked. So if you charge the buffer basically pretty much at the limit of, I saw that for the 3 watt dynamos 28 and 29 kind of reach a limit at around 5 watts. So let's see if you limit the electronics at 6 and charge at 5. So let's see if they can keep up better. But again, buffer recharge Project X, as you can see, is significantly more efficient than the other two. And again, this repeated over all devices, which I still don't know. I'm discussing this with Schmidt, but again, I don't really care. I mean, I want to understand it from an academic point of view, but it is a good part of, if you have a power supply, you want it to act like this. So Project X certainly acts better. The other two can kind of keep up, which is expected, which is what I expected. That's why I regulated everything at 5 watts. But then you start adding load, and as you can see, Project X keeps up, while the other ones reach kind of like a ceiling at 5. And since it is, I kind of put the limit very close to what the recharge is. Even if you add a higher load, then because of the power flow control, basically, I think it probably starts pulling from the battery. Again, Project X keeps up, while the other ones reach a limit, basically fits the pattern. So we get to the conclusion of all of this. Basically, the idea was that, this dynamo, if tuned a bit harder, because they can do this, so it is out of regulation, like in a positive way, would it be a better alternative for me? And so 3 watt dynamo is a 3 watt dynamo, and no matter what you do to it, no matter how you spin to it, or as my mom says, no matter how much you turn, your ass is still behind you. So 12 ohms is basically old technology. So if you keep making things with it, something that's old technology, we have outgrown this type of power supply for a very long time. So we should try to make things better. And dynamo load matters, so numbers are not what they are reported to be. So depends what you put the dynamo. So I mean, you see these numbers turn out 12 watts, etc. It like, so load and speed matters, but what I showed you here, it's like real world conditions. It is like charging like it's not an electronic test load. It is real world devices, and the pattern kind of stayed the same. So Project X is significantly better, and it's like what you would expect, and it's how would you make a power supply with modern power needs on the bike in mind. And with that being said, probably of the two people that still are watching this out of all my graphs, I got some news. Project X would be launched in October 2025 at the Bespoke show, so the first batch of limited edition hubs would be designed there. Obviously, I'll make another video. I'll post everything on my website with details. And of course, the engineer of SON who makes this, Nasir, he's currently doing an ultra race, the Node K4000. So I wish him all the best. But if nothing happens with him until then, until August and October, it would be, we have to probably agree on some details. I still haven't received the official offer that I need to sign, but I mean, more or less we have agreed on price and all that. So this would come. And with that being said, if you have any questions and all that, put them in the comment, and thank you for watching.